Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to Turbo 360. Welcome to the channel. In this tutorial, we're going to create a simple blog website that's going to look like this. We're going to actually use this as our template, and we're going to use Node and Express, and we're going to deploy on Turbo 360, obviously. Actually, we're going to deploy on a variation of Turbo called Vertex, which is basically an alternative platform built on top of Turbo, which makes it easier to do things like change content and update visual content very easily, as you'll see later on when we get to it in this tutorial. But the main point is that this is a Node Express tutorial. You do need to have some background in JavaScript. This is not a total beginner tutorial, so if you're completely new to code, you've never coded before in your entire life, this might be too fast for you. But if you've done some basic tutorials online, you know what a REST API is, you know how to create a model or a schema for your database, things like that, then this is a good place to begin to create something a little bit more beyond just the basic to-do application. And you can actually use this as a real blog if you want when we're done with it. So that's it. Let's go ahead and get started. First thing we need to do is make sure you have the proper tools and environments installed. So we are going to use Node and Express, which of course means you need the Node runtime. So head over to nodejs.org, make sure you have the LTS version downloaded and installed. If you don't, go ahead and do it. It only takes about 2 minutes. And then once that's done, open up your terminal, or your command prompt if you're on Windows. If you have a Mac and you don't know where the terminal is, just open up your Finder, do a search for terminal, and this is actually not the easiest way. Go to Applications, and then Utilities, and then Terminal right here, and that's your terminal. And then you should probably put it on your dock because you'll be using it a lot if you're going to be a programmer. So I'm going to open up my terminal. I already have it open actually, and I've navigated over to my desktop, which is where I'm going to be doing this project. Of course, you can go ahead and do it wherever you do your work normally. So I'm going to first check the Node version that we're running. And I'm running 10.15.3, so a few points behind, but not a big deal. And then I'm going to run the npm version, check the npm version, and make sure you have that installed as well. And then last but not least, we do need the turbo CLI, the command line interface. So you can do sudo npm install -g turbo CLI to make sure you have that. If you're on Windows, you actually don't need the sudo. I think you can just do it from npm right there. And also, if you've had this turbo CLI installed from, say, a previous tutorial, just go ahead and do this again because we're posting updates to this pretty regularly. So go ahead and do that and check the turbo version when that's done, and make sure your version number is at least this number or higher. So if you check your version and it's a lower number than this, go ahead and run the update. Just reinstall it, and you should see this number or higher, which means you're good to go. And Turbo will give us our scaffolding engine for our basic Node Express project, and so we can go ahead and get our project set up and start working. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's create our project, Turbo, new, and I'm going to call it dev blog. And this is going to create our Node Express application on Turbo. I'm on my desktop, so here's the project that we just scaffolded. You'll notice that we have a package.json because this is a Node project. So I want to cd into that. So cd into the dev blog, and then run the npm install because this is a Node Express project. So while that's going, it usually takes about a minute or so. It's installing all the packages. I'm going to open up the code in my text editor, and so we can step through the code and just get familiar with the architecture. So here we have our app.js, which is really where the app is instantiated, and we connect our route files, and that's it. So pretty simple. Here we have our views directory, which gives us our index.mustache file. So we are using the mustache templating engine, which is really just like handlebars. They're basically the same. And this is our home page, our index.mustache. And if we open up the routes directory, here we have our index route, which is serving the home page request right now, as well as a couple other sample routes. Most of this we'll just replace anyway once we start setting up our blog. And don't worry about the API route, same difference there. So we're going to replace most of this once we start setting up our blog. We have a public directory which stores our static assets, so our CSS, our images, and our JS, and the turbo scaffold gives us a couple sample static assets, and same deal, we'll probably end up removing most of these. So the packages should be installed now, which they are, so that's done. And once that's confirmed, let's go ahead and run the turbo dev server, and we can check localhost 3000. Whoops, excuse me. I don't know why that happens sometimes. Localhost 3000 to make sure everything is running properly on localhost. So once we confirm that, we are good to go. So this is what it looks like when we run the initially scaffolded turbo project. So that's good to go. And we can turn it off by doing Control-C. So our server is now turned off. And you may have recognized that we were just looking at the index.mustache file rendered through the index.js route file. And that's how the initial project scaffold looks on Turbo. And this is a Node-Express project. So the next thing we want to do is we want to extend this initial scaffold because it's very bare bones, right? It doesn't give us much to work with other than like one page and a simple route. There are no models here. There's no database connection, nothing of that sort. There's no REST API. Really, nothing's connected. So we can set all that up from scratch, but what we're going to use is a feature on Turbo called Templates, which basically gives us pre-formatted projects with certain models and API endpoints that we can use rather than creating them over and over again, mostly because there are certain types of projects or models, I should say, that are used across several projects. For example, a blog post. Blog posts show up in a lot of projects. Whether it be a resume or a portfolio or a business site, really it shows up everywhere. So we have that built into the Turbo template. So the way it works is there are a handful of template configurations that we can choose from, and some of which have a blog and some of which don't. So we're going to use a template configuration called portfolio. Because if you think about it, this site right here is essentially a portfolio website. In fact, there's even I think like a project section. Let me see if I can dig it back up. So here, it is, and then I think there's a project section right here. Side projects. So he only has one anyway, but okay. So anyway, going back to my point, the portfolio template structure is most appropriate for what we have here. So once we run that command, you should see this confirmation, and when we open up the project, we're going to see more stuff that wasn't here before. Most importantly, we have a models directory and a controllers directory. And the models directory gives us two models now, a post, which is a blog post schema, which you can see here, title, preview, slug, link, etc., and a project, which is for projects, portfolio projects, which we may or may not use. But we're certainly going to use the blog post, and we have controllers for each one of these models, which gives us the full CRUD operations that we want. Get, post, get by ID, post, put, and deletes. And all the CRUD operations can be run through these controllers. And so this scaffolding, this template scaffolding saves us a lot of time from doing this over and over and over again. So let's go ahead and see how it looks in the actual code. So once we go ahead and install the template, we do turbo dev server again. And we'll go back to localhost 3000. And you'll notice it looks a little bit different. The home page is now a little bit different. It says Vertex 360 because these templates are built to be deployed on the Vertex 360 environment, which is right here. And basically the Vertex 360 environment is the same as Turbo, but optimized for these templates. So that's the only real difference there. Beyond that, it's not too not too significant. There are a few other notable differences which we'll get to later on in the tutorial. However, let's go back and run the dev server and check the API endpoints. So if you recall, we have two new models, or what's called resources in the parlance of a REST API. So we have two resources now with their corresponding controllers already connected. And so what we can do is test the API endpoints by doing /API/post, and we get a valid response because the API is already connected once we extended the project using the template. So we have API post and as well as API project, and then we can do a GET request for an individual project. Of course, it won't be found because our database, quote unquote, is empty right now. Same thing as post. Now, we probably won't use the project endpoint in this tutorial. We might not, but we certainly will use the post endpoint. There's no doubt about that. So we have to make sure that that's properly set up. So what we can do now is we can turn off the dev server and go ahead and grab the template that we're going to use to plug in the project. So that's this guy right here. So this template is designed by someone else. It's designed by this woman right here, who's been very gracious enough to create these Bootstrap templates for free and under the Creative Commons licenses. So what that means is we have to keep this attribution down here on the bottom, and maybe send her a tweet or something like that. She gave her a shout out on Twitter saying thanks for the templates. These are very nice, and she's doing great work. So here is the GitHub repo for this particular template. So go ahead and make sure you have this GitHub URL properly in your browser. And let's grab this guy from GitHub and then clone into it so we can start using it. So I'm going to open a new tab in my terminal, cd back to my desktop, and then I'm going to clone that repository. And then I am going to cd into it. So dev blog theme. I'm going to cd into this guy. And then open that up in my editor as well. And here is what we have for that theme. So here we have our index.html, which is the home page for that theme. And this is all hard-coded, of course. So what we want to do is highlight all of this, and then we want to paste it into our project over here inside the views index.mustache. So let's get rid of all of this and paste it in from the theme that we cloned into. So hopefully you caught that. We opened up the index.html, we highlighted the entire thing, and then we pasted those contents into the index mustache of our project. So make sure you properly caught that. If not, make sure you pause the video and get all the text in the right spots. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to carry over the assets. So I'm going to minimize these, and then here is the project from the GitHub repo, and here is our project. So I'm going to open up our project on the right and the original template on the left. And we need to move these static assets over here, into our public directory. So these files have to go in here. Pretty much it's as simple as that. So the way I normally do it is I grab a folder like this, SCSS, and I just move the whole thing. So I move plugins like that. But if the folders have the same name, what I normally do is I open up both versions, and I move the contents from the theme into our project so that none of our original files gets written over. And then same thing with images. So I open up both directories, move that over here, and then last but not least, CSS. So we grab this and throw those over here, and then that should be good to go. So it's pretty simple. We move the static assets from the theme over into our static asset directory, which is called public. So now if we go back to our project right here, and we look at the index.mustache, you may notice that her static assets directory is called assets, which we don't have. We have it as just public, and then all the static assets are inside the public directory. So in our project, we don't have an assets directory. We're going to have to get rid of that. This should really just be like that, and that's it. So we can just go through these one at a time if you want. I don't think there's really that many anyhow. Or you can do like a quick find and replace. So if I do a find and replace for assets like that, and I can just replace it with the backslash, I can get rid of all of them in one command, and that makes it a little bit faster to take care of that. So hopefully that makes sense on your end. Let's go ahead and run the dev server and see if it worked. So we do turbo dev server. And then run localhost. And we don't see the new page yet. So let's go ahead and fix that. So if we take a look at the app.js, you'll see that our page route is connected right here to page. And then if we open up the page route, so the page route right here is the one that's serving the home page right now. So it created a new page route. And then if we open that up, you'll see this router.get is serving the home page right now. And that is rendering the home.mustache. And that is right here, home.mustache, which is what you see right here, the new Welcome to Vertex 360 page. So if we grab our index.mustache and then paste it into the home mustache, that's really what we should have done the whole time. So that's oversight on my part. So this is what's rendering on the home page now. So we should go ahead and try it now to see if we're seeing the right content. And then reload, and then here we go. So now we're running the project from our own server locally, and we've confirmed that we're seeing everything that we expect to see. And let's make sure there's no JavaScript errors or anything like that, and there are not, so that's good. And let's go ahead, and I'm actually going to get rid of this little spinning wheel right here. The idea there is to show you that you can use different themes if you want. You're free to do that, very simple. It's simply picking one of the other HTML CSS themes right here, where it says theme 1, theme 2, theme 3. If I do theme 2, it'll show up in a different color. I'm going to actually go with that because I like that color better. So let's go ahead and get rid of this little gear icon because I'm just not a big fan of it. And let's see here. Right here, style switcher. And she even left a message right here saying remove on your production site. So a little note saying to get rid of that. And let's see. Style switcher, so it's still showing up. Let's find where that element is in the HTML and get rid of it. Alright, another way we can do this is to find the style switcher JS file and find the element it's looking for, so config trigger. And that looks like that's it right there. So this guy right here is the one that we want. And that should take care of that. Okay. So just in case you didn't catch that, what I did was I opened up the style switcher JavaScript file and I identified which HTML element it was looking for, it was taking over, and then I identified that right here, and then I just did a search for it, and then I got rid of it. So that takes care of that. Now the next thing we're going to do is configure this project for deployment on Vertex so we can make sure it works live on the server as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Make sure you head over to vertex360.co and create an account if you don't already. Now if you have an account on Turbo, it's the same environment, it's the same ecosystem. That means you already have an account on Vertex. So you can just go ahead and log in and that's fine too. Either way is fine. And then once you do that, you should see this right here, or obviously with your account details. And then head over to Sites, and let's create our deployment environment for this project. So what we're going to do next is create this template for this project. I'm going to call it dev blog for the same name. The names don't have to be the same, but the template configuration does. So if you recall, we use the portfolio template. These are the other options that you have, and we will be adding to these, by the way. So as time goes on, there's going to be more template options, but we're using portfolio. And if you want to use the most basic option, that would be base. So we're going to use the portfolio option, and then we're going to create our template on the Vertex environment, and this will give us our deployment environment for this project. What we need, excuse me, what we need in this particular case is the site ID and the API key. So once you have your project launched on the Vertex environment, let's go ahead and connect our local source code to that project. So the next thing we do is turn off the server, and then we do turbo, and then connect. You may need to do turbo login so that it can authenticate who you are with the 567 with the project, so that it knows that you're authorized to connect these environments. So then the next thing we do is turbo connect, and then we grab the site ID from your new project, and then we just paste that in, and then we do the same thing with the API key, paste that in, and then that's pretty much it. This project is now configured for this environment on Vertex, so that part is done. So the last thing we need to do now is deploy it to make sure it works on the staging environment, and then once we confirm that, we are essentially ready to go, and we can start hammering out the actual dynamic code of this project. So this should take about 1 to 2 minutes, and then once that's done, it's going to give us a staging link URL, which we can then confirm whether or not the project has been successfully deployed to the staging environment on Vertex. So that should be ready in about a minute, and we can just double check that. Okay, so when it's done, you're going to see this confirmation, this completion message right here, and it gives us our staging URL, which we can then just copy and paste into a browser, and we should see the same thing, which we do. Notice here we're running the staging URL, so it is not a localhost, and that means everything worked on staging the same way it does on local, which means everything worked. So that's good. So it's good to go. So in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to set up the actual editing functionality of this site. We're going to start plugging in some dynamic content like blog posts. We're going to make all this configurable, and we're going to make this site, this blog post, unique to you as a developer, but we're also going to plug in the CMS for these blog posts and maybe eventually the projects as well. So hopefully you got all this working. Obviously, let me know if you had any trouble. Please leave a message in the comments letting me know if you had any problems, and I'll try to answer them as quickly as I can. And in the next video, we'll start actually working in the dynamic functionality behind this content. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.